Hello, I'm Stanton Peele, Dr. Stanton Peele, I should say. I'm the founder and the clinical director of the Life Process Program, Coaching of Addiction. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how I became interested in addiction, how I learned about addiction, and why I feel the Life Process Program is a very much needed addition to the field of addiction. So let me start out way back in the beginning when I was 5 years old. I grew up in a part of Philadelphia called South Philly, and it so happened we lived on a block where a man came home drunk every night. And for some reason, even at the age of 5, I was extremely preoccupied with this. I kept asking my mother questions, and she said, "Why are you so interested in a man being drunk?" And the answer to that question was, I was learning the principles of self-control from my parents. I wouldn't say I came from a rigid background, but I came from a strict one. And when somebody violated those norms, I wanted to know all about it. So when people ask me, when did you become interested in addiction? Did you study it in college? Did you get a degree in addiction? Did you learn about it in rehab? I go, oh, sure. I learned about addiction and began a lifetime of thinking about addiction far, far earlier than that. Okay, let me jump ahead now to my teen years. My father, he was a gentleman. I was never hit or abused as a child, but my father was extremely, extremely anxious. Whenever anything went the slightest bit wrong, he would go off on a tizzy, and the consequence of his going off in a tizzy was that the situation would get even worse. I was reading the Philadelphia Bulletin one afternoon when I was 14 years old, and I read a story about a man who had been an alcoholic, and he went off to rehab. And in the interim, while he was at rehab, his wife had moved to a new apartment, and he came home to the new apartment, and there were boxes strewn all over the place. He took one look at all of that disorganization, and it was so stressful to him, he turned on his heel, ran out, and went on a bender. And at the age of 14, I thought, gosh, that's an awful lot like my father. And what I saw was the underlying principles of how people rely on different emotional states or drugs or alcohol or other forms of addiction in order to deal with anxiety. But what makes something an addiction is that by resorting to it, you in fact worsen the conditions that created the original need for the addiction. Let me jump ahead even further. When I was in college, I had a roommate. That roommate we were juniors when he got a girlfriend. And his girlfriend was in high school, so she was quite young. And she thought he was the world of him. I mean, he was a college junior, he was cool. And my friend said to me, my roommate said to me, well, now that I have so-and-so as a girlfriend, I'm really not going to be seeing any more of you, meaning the rest of his friends. I'm going to spend all my free time with Carol. And at the time, as a junior in college myself, I thought, well, I guess that makes sense. They got married when they were seniors in college, and then he got a fellowship, quite a brilliant person, and he went to Berkeley. She had gone to 1 year of college while he was a senior, and now she enrolled in Berkeley. And a funny thing happened when she was at Berkeley. She learned that her husband, brilliant as he was, wasn't the coolest guy in the world. Berkeley was teeming with cool guys. He mainly stayed home and did research and studied. One day he came home from his laboratory. He was a physicist, and there was a note for him. The note said, "I've decided to leave you. Goodbye, Carol." This happened while I myself was in graduate school, and I talked to my friend Archie Brodsky, whom I wrote Love and Addiction with, and I said, "You mean they were in love, totally committed to each other?" Then she found out, well, there's a lot of other cool guys out here, and in a fell instant, in one swift strike, she just decided, well, I'm going to leave him. And after all that amount of love, all that deserved as a parting was a simple handwritten note. And I said to Archie on the telephone, I was in Ann Arbor at the time, you know, they weren't in love, they were addicted. They each were very needy, and each of them filled the role that the other needed. And that was a mutual dependency. It wasn't a genuine caring and sharing relationship. And once one of them ceased to fulfill that role, once my ex-roommate wasn't satisfactory as a romantic partner, he had no use to his former wife at all. He was gone. And that is how a relationship can be addictive.